It's Michael Laidler here for another Meet Our Community in the Leadership Inner Circle, where we take members of our group, our community, and simply talk. So we can learn how to collaborate, how to work together, how to make this society a lot better for not just us as leaders, but all the leaders that are coming up and leaders that are being created as we speak. I'm not going to delay much further. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest for today. You guys give me 1 second. Let me pull up some screens. Our guest today will be Curtis. Curtis, how you doing tonight?
Good. I'm doing fine, Michael.
Great. Like I was telling you before, I'm so excited to have you on today. As you guys can tell, my voice is a little under the weather, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have a wonderful, wonderful time together. So I'm going to jump right into it, Curtis. I'm going to jump right in so people can understand who you are. As your title for this program for Meet Our Community, you put leadership coach, trainer, speaker. Explain to us what that means.
Well, for me, I've got 28 years of experience in public education. And for me, what that means is I give back to the people who have given to me, and I try to give to people for the future. I've always been fortunate throughout my career that whenever I thought I was happy and content and happy to be doing what I was doing, I had somebody push me to do something more. I can think back through my career, 5, 6, 7 guys that pushed me to be where I'm at today, and I wouldn't be there without their encouragement and their push to make me look at different ways of doing leadership or taking on new roles in the schools I worked in. So it's always been one of those things that when I've got to this level in my career in school, being an associate superintendent or working as a building principal or working at the college or at the state level where I've worked out through my entire career, I've always tried to give back to them because of all the experiences I've gotten. There are people that force me, I don't want to say force, but kind of encourage me, but sometimes I was voluntold to do things. So it was one of those things where I kept growing because people saw something in me, and I try to do that. I look at people, look at the best in people, and try to encourage them to do things and give them the ability to make the mistakes I made as well, because as part of your leadership skills, you definitely make mistakes and you learn from them. So trying not to judge people on those things. So I always try to give back to people and look at it in the global context instead of in that moment context. And that's why I put that in there, because I always try to encourage people, coach people to do their best no matter what happens.
And it's funny because, Curtis, you're saying you have 28 years of experience, specifically in education. And you know that we have several members of our group. You know, Pam, she talked last week, and she's in education as well. How has that transition been going from taking the skills that you learned throughout the 28 years of your professional career in education to now making a more focus on leadership, coaching, training, and speaking?
I think it's given me a definitely broad background, because when you're dealing in public education, we're dealing with all types of cultures, all types of people. So you learn different things in each situation that you are in that you can apply to these situations, because each person has his own unique experience and unique backgrounds. And you can look at the cultural and their educational backgrounds as well as them as a whole as a person. And when you deal with those people, the vast amount of experience you get in education working with all these different types of people, you can think of situations you've been in, or you can think of people that have influenced you or people you have dealt with, that you can take pieces from all of these and put it together and look at that person in a new way. And I think that's the unique thing about transitioning into this type of coaching, leadership training, leadership speaking. You have a lot of knowledge, but each time you're adding on to your knowledge as well, dealing with these people. So it's a give and take relationship that you get out of this. It's just not a one way. It's a two-way relationship that you coach that person, you learn from them, they learn from you. And I try to take some from each of those pieces. And I think that's where my background in education comes in very handy in this, is because you can take these situations from your past, look at it in a new light, and maybe you do something different, or you've done something in the past that works for that person, but may not work in the current day of what's happening. So I love that about that, because you get to learn a lot about people, a lot of different ways. You get a lot of give and take. And that's the part of this I like the best, is that one-on-one interaction and working with people or working with groups.
Yeah, and that interaction is so compelling to the growth of all of us, because as we all know, the more you connect with people one-on-one, the more you really grow with them.
Yes.
Versus away from them. So what's been your biggest challenge jumping into the coaching and training world?
I think for me, I've always done it as part of the job, but looking at doing it as a secondary career or making that transition from education to this is my primary career, because you're juggling time. I mean, we all have time issues with family and all those things. Just trying to divide up the time and make sure I commit the necessary amount of time needed to be successful on both sides of this, and doing that balancing act and making sure we have that. And I think the other thing about it is too, is sometimes when you're an educator going in talking to business leaders or like that, there's that us versus them, business versus education mentality, that you're not in their world. But my background is very diverse. I've worked in workforce development as a state CTE director in Alaska, so I worked with a lot of businesses and cooperatives. So I can bridge that very quickly in discussion. But though, just getting through the door and talking to people at their level with their language, when you compare education versus business models, or going into work with companies or working individually with certain people may have different backgrounds that I may not be familiar with. I think that's the thing, is those are the two things, the time and being able to talk with them in their language at their point in time and have them understand I'm not just a person who's been in public education for 28 years. I got a variety of experiences outside of education I can bring to the table and work with them.
So, they're outside of all the people saying hello and welcome. You got Darren, Scott, Amarai. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Now Jermaine talking about leadership. Mm-hmm. What about the new leaders, the new people that are, let's say they're educators? If you had a chance to transition your career earlier, where do you think you would be at right now?
I think I would have done it much sooner. I think when I look back at what I had done, and it gets back to me being content with me working in education. I think I would have pushed myself more earlier in life, looking at this, because there's a lot of value given to you in this process and these systems and the expertise you got. But also, I don't think I would have done it like 10, 15 years ago. Well, it might have been about 15 years ago, probably when I made the transition, first starting in administration and like that, and doing some of those things in my education career. But I think if I would have known if I would have done this, I was exposed to John Maxwell's leadership theories during my dissertation process. And I actually met with a group when I was a superintendent back in Ohio on that. And I thought about doing it in 2011, 2012. So when I first got exposed to leadership and those types of things, that's when I really seriously started thinking about it. But it wasn't the right time in my life, because I still had kids going through high school, going through college. And I think once I got the second one out, which is last year, this was the right time for me right now to be able to do it.
So what I take from that is it's all about timing when you make this transition. There's really no perfect time from going from a full-time profession where people may look in consistency or the guaranteed job versus kind of going out on that limb, because it's really up to the person. It's up to the leader. It's up to the entrepreneur to kind of make that decision. There's no real formula, so to speak, or it's definitely not a science.
No, it's definitely not a science. I've seen a lot of people try this and fail, and I've seen a lot of people do it to be very successful on both sides of this. It's up to the individual person and what their individual needs are at that time. And I think the other part about that is the support of the units you have around you, whether it's people like you inside your community, if it's your immediate family, if it's your mentor that's outside. Like I could name Jim Cielo, Greg Lugwood, Bob Trapp for my mentors of leadership throughout my education career. It's just a matter of the amount of risk and the amount of it's almost, you're gambling on yourself is what you're doing, Michael. And you've got to have faith that you're going to be able to do it. You put your foot forward, and if you're going to go in it, you can't go into it 50%, which I've talked to a lot of other educational consultants and business consultants that I've worked through. You can't do it 50%. If you're going to do it, you got to make sure you got 100% commitment and be able to do it in the way that meets your needs and your desires and what your goals are.
Absolutely. And Jermaine actually has a question for you, Curtis. So I know you can't see it on your screen, but the question that he poses is, what would you tell a 21-year-old who sees himself becoming a businessman focusing on leadership?
Go for it. I mean, looking at if he has the goals and desires to do it, I mean, that's the time to really look at it, especially if you have that strong desire to be that person and you're looking at entrepreneurial spirit and those types of things, the younger you make mistakes, the better off you are. I hate to say it. I mean, but if you look at the people that you deal with, look at the number of people. Even Mark Cuban had 2 bankruptcies before he hit it rich with his company when now he owns the Dallas Mavericks. So try it. You may have to adapt in many different forms, because I've reinvented myself many times throughout my educational career and the many jobs I've had. I've been an athletic director. I've been a superintendent, building principal, teacher, coach. You keep reinventing yourself every day in these jobs. And I think that's the important part. You go out, make sure you can get your focus, make sure you stay focused on it, and make sure you surround yourself with positive influences, because you're going to hear all the negative. You're too young to do this. You're too young to do that. Nobody's too young to do anything. I've seen 14-year-olds do great things in schools when you give them the opportunity. So I would say take it by the horns, run with it, and get as many people to help you as possible, and make sure you have those positive influences around you can relate to, because it's not always going to be smooth. You have to make sure you have people that you can sound off on, be able to get to, and I just think it's an important time. Might as well do it better now than later.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely get the mistakes out early, like you said. Yeah. So, Curtis, for Jermaine and maybe some of the other younger listeners, or just people new into entrepreneurship, what do you do when you hit that roadblock of failure?
For me, I sit back and reflect a lot on what I've done to get to that point. Self-reflection is a critical part of your own leadership journey, because you may think the one effort that you made was the right one, but you could have 10 or 12 different paths to get to where you want to go, and you're thinking this is the right one. I do a lot of self-reflection. I talk to a lot of people, people that have been important to my wife especially. She knows me better than most anybody in this world, about my strengths and my weaknesses. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And I also talk to people, and I also go back after I hit that roadblock. If I can't get to the person, I go back and talk to them later, maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. Just depends on how that roadblock came about. Was it butting heads, or is it just one of those, just wasn't the right time? So it depends on the situation, too, of how you react to that roadblock. And I try to talk to that person about what caused it and see if there's a way I could change or meet it. And usually I get a second meeting sometimes with these people, because I'm willing to look at them. It's just not the right time right now for us. Can we look at it in 6 months? You want me to touch base with you? I think those are the types of things you got to do. Each situation is so different and unique with each of your clients and each of the people you deal with. It's almost like you got 37 or 40 different marriages by the time you're done with this. Looking at each one is how you work it and how you do it. I mean, that's how you got to look at it. Is each one of these is an individual standalone relationship that doesn't interfere, but some may intersect down the road. You don't know. So I think that's the key part, your own self-reflection. How can you do it? How can you improve? And there are other ways that can you address those issues and those roadblocks?
Yeah, I think that's important, being able to address them early and address them with a group. I know we've talked about that several times already with some of the great leaders we already had. We talked about having a circle, not just the leadership inner circle, which this is great, but also people around you, trusted family, trusted friends, people who can be that soundboard. So when you do fail, not if you fail, but when you do fail, you have that person to kind of hold you up and bring you back to reality. Mm-hmm. So going forward, let me just say hi to Amado out of Barbados. And Amara said, keep reinventing yourself, which is great. You got to keep the process going over and over. So going forward, Curtis, what do you think that you can bring or someone can bring to help foster collaboration with your leadership training, coaching, and speaking?
I think the biggest thing is when you look at this, is just the dialogue and discussion among people is very important. Because I may get something from you. I mean, I've already had one phone conversation with you, and we hit 5 or 6 topics in a matter of 5 minutes. It was like boom, 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 boom. I didn't think of that. You didn't think of that. Just that dialogue to keep your brain moving and thinking in different directions. I mean, we talk about divergent thinking, lateral thinking, and future thinking. What you may have ready now may not be what is ready for now. It may be what you can do in 3, 6 months, a year, 2 years, but you create those mental note cards or you write them down in a log or somewhere. that you can go back and refer to. And that's part of your constant reflection. What have I done? What have I looked at? Oh, that's an idea that I might be able to do in a year after I get this going over here. So there's so many moving parts to this. I call it like when Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, made the work a lot easier, but also made it a lot more difficult. So now you got to repair the cotton gin every time it breaks down and all those types of things. This is the way leadership works, because you may be doing something right. All of a sudden that person is neglecting something else. And now you got to work on that piece. You got to bring out the oil and lube it a little bit. So I think that's the important part, is to get as many of your thoughts down as much as you can do. Talk to people, take mental notes, physical notes, whatever you do. My first cell phone was a BlackBerry when I actually had that. So when I see it's coming back now, we got BlackBerry coming back now with keyboard. So I think looking at those things, I'd type all those notes in there and I'd have that stuff and be able to refer back to it from conversations like that. And I think that's the important part. Just create the dialogue. Even you may not have similar backgrounds. Leadership's leadership, and you can go ahead and learn something from each other and look at different ways or strategies or tactics you might be able to use can apply to your situation at that point in time.
Wow, I agree. Dialogue, reflection. I think you gave so many great nuggets tonight on this Sunday, July 8th, that people should be able to go back, comment, reply, share, do all the necessary things to keep this message going. And Curtis, you did such a great job tonight. All of the guests that we have done a great job. I love where everybody's going, the passion you guys bring, especially when I'm not 100%. You guys bring the fire back into me, making me want to do this for another 30 minutes. But I know that we limit it for a reason.
Yes.
So thank you, Curtis. Thank you for all the people that have been on tonight. There's so many great comments. I apologize if I didn't get to put all of them on the screen, but we did. Thank you. We have so many likes, so many great reactions. This has been very, very great for me. Curtis, do you have any parting words?
The only word is, people, get out here and do this. I mean, I've learned so much from the first parts. I've taken notes on each of the presentations. You may be a little bit scared, but the worst thing is going to be, you're going to have a video out on the internet for a little bit so people can learn from. I mean, you can see stupid stuff on YouTube, or you can be on Facebook Live with Michael and be able to do this stuff and learn from each other. Do it, please. We all learn from each other.
Yes, guys. If you guys didn't know, this is a completely free, raw, unedited conversation. We don't prepare nothing. Whoever else has been on, you can tell them I ask them maybe one or two things. Pretty much, how's your lighting and how's your audio, and we go from there. And I think this is awesome, because this is when we truly connect with each other. And if you guys don't know about connection, there's so many books about it. I'll talk about one, John Maxwell. Everyone communicates, few connect. Connection is so important, and that's what we love to do, especially in the leadership inner circle. Once again, thank you, Curtis. You've been an awesome, great, amazing, whatever other word people can come up with, a guest. I'm sure everybody else loved it, and I can definitely see the excitement going forward, not just from this interview, but all the other interviews that we will have.
Yep. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. You all have a great night.